Vincent Goodwill is here joining us on the Rich Eisen Show. We are grateful for his time, NBA senior writer, also the host of the Good Word podcast on Yahoo Sports. You've had zero sleep. You're being so nice coming on off that red eye from Denver. What sticks out to you about this game more than anything? When did you know this game was just off the rails?
Right around the time of the third quarter. Thanks for actually having me. I really do appreciate being on here. I think it was right around the time of the third quarter. And, media members, we all sit on the same row. We're all sitting, talking, and conversing with each other throughout the game. And at the 10-minute mark, it was a 20-point game. We're like, man, it's going to be another blowout. It's going to be a Game 7 blowout. We can start writing. We can start finalizing our trips. And then you look up, and it's a 5-point game. And you're like, and the arena goes quiet. And you're looking around, and there's this spot. I'm not sure if people could see it on the TNT broadcast, but there was this spot right above the Minnesota Timberwolves visiting bench, and it's just Timberwolves fans. And they are going crazy, saying, let's go Wolves. Now, granted, there's 20,000 people there, and there's maybe, 150 of those people over there, but they're making so much noise, and you're like, oh, they haven't figured out yet that they're not supposed to be here. They are not longer just playing with this sort of ignorance is bliss. Like with every minute, they start to gain more confidence. With every minute, they start to realize, like something I think a lot of us realized a few days ago, Suzy, they're the better team. And a lot of times you can beat a better team and you don't realize it until 2 weeks after the playoff series is over and you're in Cancun or Bora Bora or something like that. And you're not just sitting with regret. You're sitting with, man, we were actually the better team. And that light went on for Minnesota when Denver couldn't blow them out, and then the game just started to change right then and there. And it was really, really compelling to watch a crowd that was so amped and they wanted blood to a crowd that was sort of cowering in the corner a little bit towards the end of the game.
So why were they the better team, though? Because everyone kind of figured that Denver would just keep rolling through this series.
Well, I think one of the things that we underestimated about Denver, because they had Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, those were the two big cogs last year that helped them win an NBA championship. Denver wasn't as deep this season as they were last year. And you got to have a lot of things working in your favor in terms of health, in terms of versatility and style of play. And I think that's the thing that Minnesota had working for them. They have the energy of a challenging team. Denver last year had that energy. Like it's something I heard all the time growing up from the champions of the 80s and 90s. They said, man, when you're chasing after the championship, you have so much more energy than everybody else. You're so much more hungry. When you're defending it, you got to be a little smarter. You got to play with a little more guile because other teams are hungrier than you. And not only did I see a Minnesota team that was hungrier, I saw a Minnesota team that had every answer to every question that Denver posed. Oh, you have Jokic. We got 3 bigs that can defend him and wear him out. Oh, you have wings. We have Anthony Edwards, who looks and plays like a combination of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Vince Carter, and has an endless reservoir of energy to guard Jamal Murray. So it's almost like on a test. Denver always had all the answers to the test, and whenever they asked you a question, you didn't have the answer, except Minnesota actually did have the answers. And once they realized that they were the better team, this series, that game started to take shape.
Vincent Goodwill joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show. What's it like watching Anthony Edwards in person out there?
Well, Suzy, I'm from Detroit. So I never got a chance to really enjoy Michael Jordan because it is ingrained in my blood to hate that man. But now with Anthony Edwards, it's almost like I get a second chance at it. You know what I mean? Like as a journalist, you're going to be impartial. You're not rooting for anything. But just as an athletic endeavor, as an athletic figure, he gets from one spot to the next so quick. That's just on the floor. And then the way he leaps, the way he shoots. And then, Suzy, there's this other element to it. You call it the it factor. You can call it what magnetism, whatever it is. He embraces being exactly who he is, not just on the floor, but off the floor. Like he can go viral without trying to. Like he exerts his leadership in a way that is endearing to his teammates and even endearing to us when we're asking him questions. And he's so very confident. I think it's going to hit all of us later on, not just in the playoffs or the finals. It's going to hit us all during the Olympic Games because Kevin Durant's going to be there. LeBron's going to be there. Steph is going to be there. And all those guys are going to try to mark their territory as far as where they sit on the mountain of the NBA. And Anthony Edwards one day is going to walk in there and tell all those old guys to sit down and go stand behind him because the league that was once theirs is now his. And I can't wait for that
Oh,
moment.
I love that you said that. It really, I think that was spot on because I so remember covering Kobe and watching that happen and the resentment that some of the older guys had for him because Kobe walked in more with a chip on his shoulder, whereas Anthony Edwards just seemed so joyous. And I feel like what we're going to watch in Paris is we're going to just see these guys not only stand up and puff their chest, but embrace him a little bit. And I think part of that is what we see in his relationship with Karl Anthony Towns. Like the way those two are so symbiotic. What did you see from the two of them on the floor last night and how his trust in his teammates ended up in them defeating the Denver Nuggets?
You know, it's really funny because when we think of Kobe Bryant and we think of Michael Jordan in terms of their leadership, it's almost like you lead because you're afraid of them. Like they exert their will on you. They're charismatic, but in a much more hard driving way. He's almost like a quarterback in a way where he realizes these guys have to play for me. These guys are going to like me. And I don't think it's like a subconscious decision where he's going across and saying those things. I just think that's a part of his makeup. And I think he looked at Karl Towns and said, there's a way that I can approach in dealing with them if I'm being my teammate. This guy's been here 6 or 7 years before me. I'm going to pump him up and say that he's the best offensive player on the team, even if he isn't. I'm going to pump him up and say he's the best defender, big man we have on our team, even though Rudy Gobert is standing next to him, who's a 4-time defensive player of the year. He knows what each player needs and pours life into him while also holding that guy accountable in public while not emasculating him. When you tell Karl Towns to stop fouling, people laugh because it feels funny. It feels like it's coming from a place of warmth, not from a place of being hard and cold. And I don't know if that's something that you learn at 22 years old. I feel like that's something that you have inside of you. I think that's something that you learn through dealing with people and not just being an athlete. And I feel like Anthony Edwards gets the people stuff right, as well as any 22-year-old I've been around at this stage.
Who was the player on the court last night that you couldn't take your eyes off of? Let's just take Anthony Edwards aside. Was it Naz Reid? Who was that? Was it Jaden McDaniels?
You know what it was? Believe it or not, it was Rudy Gobert because Rudy Gobert is so maligned. He's one of those things where he can be underappreciated and fairly maligned at the same time. You know what I mean? Like he's a 4-time defensive player of the year, but people look at him and say, well, you can't guard Nikola Jokic. Can you find me someone on the planet who can? Because nobody can guard this guy. But that's the standard that we held Rudy Gobert to. And he had a forgettable first half. And that's one of those first halves where you go into the locker room and you're wondering, is Rudy still going to be there with me? Rudy has gotten played off the floor during playoff games. And in a deciding 7th game against a guy who has become your kryptonite, he played strong on the boards. He played his game. He didn't try to be something that he wasn't. All his other teammates lifted him up. And then when he got the ball with a 9-1 shot left with 0 on the clock and he threw it up, you could just feel the air leave the arena because once shots like that happen, it's almost like even though there's 5 minutes left in this game and the game is still within reach, it feels like the game turned and everybody realized it was the Minnesota Timberwolves night. So I know that's not necessarily the answer. Like Karl Towns had an excellent game yesterday, but I felt like Rudy Gobert being in the eye of the storm, being a defensive player of the year who's not necessarily respected or liked and sometimes does things to lean into that. I felt like he was a compelling figure last night.
No, I love that answer. Are you kidding me? Let's flip the script on this and ask about Denver. At what point were you watching this game? Did you look at these players' faces and think, oh, they're watching their season end tonight at home?
I thought about it, Suzy, a few days ago because I've covered this whole series. And after game 5, where they blew out Minnesota, I was talking to some guys in the locker room. And I said, does Minnesota know that they're better than you? And a couple of guys said, no, they don't know yet. They haven't figured it out yet. And it's our job to keep beating them and get another playoff series win before they figure it out. And I think sometime in that third quarter where I talked about where the 15-point lead went to 20, and then that 20-point lead started to dwindle, and you could see Jamal Murray getting tired, and you could see Jokic ever so slightly getting winded because you're throwing 7-footers after him and you're including them in every single action and you're playing at altitude and you play all these games for this year and you have all this fatigue, you could see it getting to him. You could see the weight getting to him. And you got to remember, Suzy, no champion has repeated in the NBA since 2018-19. And that was when, or 17-18, excuse me, when the Golden State Warriors of Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry, two supernovas at the time. You know what I mean? Like, that shows how hard it really is in today's game. It just shows how different it is. And I think you got to see last night, or I got to see the fatigue on that team, that so much has to go right, not just from coaching, from playing, from health. Everything has to go in order, and it wasn't going to happen for them. And teams know it before everybody else does. The Nuggets knew that they were going to lose before we knew they were going to lose.
Yeah, the Nuggets, the fifth consecutive defending champions to fail to reach the conference finals. That is a crazy, crazy number. Let's look ahead. Let's project. What are you thinking about as you look at the Western Conference Finals?
I'm looking at like styles make fights. Like, that's how we look at all these things. We're looking at strengths versus weaknesses. And the way that Dallas plays, and Dallas doesn't get necessarily a whole lot of credit because they beat a young Oklahoma City Thunder team, and because Dallas was here in the Western Conference Finals a couple of years ago. But when you have Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, who very quietly has put himself in a position where, Suzy, remember a year or so ago where it was Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden, and we weren't sure where Kyrie Irving would be in the league, if at all, because of all the things that Kyrie had done off the floor. Now Kyrie is quiet. People call him a leader. He's played stable. People are not going to forget all the other things. But with what he's got in front of him right now, it has helped the Dallas Mavericks get to the point that they're at now. I think the Timberwolves are the better team. I think if you match up player for player, coach for coach, is an evenly matched series. But I do think that Minnesota is just a little more dynamic. The problem is when you come off of such an emotional high of beating your rivals, beating the defending champions 3 times on their home floor, including on the Game 7, where you come back from 20 points, I wonder if you can rev up that emotional engine that much more in 2 days, because Dallas has had a couple of more days to rest, and beating Oklahoma City did not take as much out of them emotionally. I give Minnesota the advantage overall, but I would not be surprised if Luka Doncic found himself back in the, or not back in the NBA Finals, but in the NBA Finals for the first time in his career, because usually what happens in these things is the more desperate team wins.
Hey, Vincent, Chris Brockman here. I'm a huge Boston guy. Why does everyone hate Jayson Tatum?
Why does everybody from Boston think everybody hates them?
Everybody hates everybody. So
he is the most disrespected superstar that we have in this league, maybe in all of sports.
All of sports. That is a hot take of hot takes. I like it. I think to some degree, Chris, Jayson Tatum keeps people at a distance. Like, there's this magnetic quality that Anthony Edwards has, that he brings you in and you embrace him and you're able to see sort of the youthful exuberance. Jayson Tatum is a basketball player and a father. I don't know if there's that many more layers to him. And the other part of it is we've seen Jayson Tatum from the point that he was 17 or 18 years old when he, didn't have that gray hair. Remember that? Remember he had the low haircut? And we were like, man, this dude looks like a little kid.
No beard, close crop.
As a man who just learned to grow a beard in his 30s, I am jealous of a man who can grow a full beard in his 20s and still have a nice hairline. You know what I mean? But I think with Tatum's game, it isn't as explosive or as dynamic. Like, he fashions Kobe Bryant as being like his spirit animal. But Jayson Tatum is 6'10", and he's athletic enough, but he doesn't have like that flashy game that draws people in. And let's be honest here, the Celtics have wet the bed more than a few times.
Ooh, bring it, Vincent. Let's go.
In playoff games. So with their, I'm a single man. I have trust issues. I would have trust issues with the Boston Celtics if I was a fan of their franchise.
Well, we can't
lean on 1987 forever.
He also had 51 in a Game 7. Nobody else can really say that in NBA history. I'm just saying he's back-to-back first-team All-NBAs, but no one ever talks about him as an MVP favorite, the leader of it's just... I just want it to end. He needs to win a championship. I'm dying for it, so everyone can finally shut up about this. But you're right. I think the thing about, everybody knows Deuce. Everyone knows he's really all about ball, and that's kind of it. Whereas, Anthony Edwards is in movies, and he's going to be the face of this league for a long time. It does feel like Tatum will never actually be the face of the NBA.
Well, he can be something better. He can be a champion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're a Boston Celtics fan, this has to be the year where you're looking around and you're saying there's no Philadelphia, there's no Milwaukee, there's no Miami boogeymen to worry about. You're looking at this Final Four and you're saying we're the most experienced team.
Yep.
We're maybe the most talented team, and we have the expectation to win. We expect it to be here. I'm not sure the other three teams in the conference finals can say we expect to be here at this stage on May 20th in the conference finals with designs on going deeper. If the Celtics, I'm going to ask you this question. If the Celtics don't win a title this year.
Yes, whatever you're about to say is yes. It'll never happen. If they don't win.
No, not that.
Oh,
not
okay.
That,
I thought that's where you're going.
I mean, it may be. I'm from Detroit, so I revel in Celtic misery. You know what I mean? But just from a journalistic standpoint, right? You've had Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown there. You've had three different head coaches. You've had Kyrie Irving there. You've had Isaiah Thomas, the smaller one. Yep. You've had Marcus Smart. You've had all these different iterations of teams who could contend, but yet you can't close the door. And the one time you got to the NBA Finals, you had the Golden State Warriors on the ropes. And in the words of Dennis Green, you let them off the hook. You tell me how you're supposed to feel if you do not win a championship this year. Not just a failure, but where do you go from here? Do you run it back or do you look and try to make wholesale changes? Because I would think running it back would kind of be foolish.
Then how scary is it going to be, this Pacers-Celtics series? Because Tyrese Haliburton is a very, very bad man.
He is, but I feel like this series is once again set up for the Celtics if they take it seriously, Suzy. The Celtics go through this thing where they would give away a game and then they'll just lose another game. Like, from a talent standpoint, they should sweep them, right? But they're not going to sweep them because the Celtics don't take things seriously. And if there's one team that can handle Tyrese Haliburton and the pace that he plays at and the speed, it would be guys like Jrue Holiday and Derek White and Jaylen Brown. They all have the size, they all have the speed, they are all switchable, that they can actually defend him without getting in a whole lot of foul trouble, with still being able to keep the pace up and to do defense better than the Pacers do defense. If you're looking at this roster man to man, I would tell you that the Celtics should sweep this team. But I don't think they will sweep this team. I think they will get to the finals and they'll get an adequate amount of rest. But I think this is not a series for the Celtics to play with their food just because the Indiana Pacers aren't the Knicks or the Bucks or the Heat.
Okay, so you're saying, I think you're reading between the lines, Celtics, Mavs, correct?
I am saying I plan on being at Prince's house during the NBA Finals.
All right.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I plan on taking a visit to Paisley Park during the NBA Finals, and I can't do that if I'm at Jerry World.
I hear you. You're going to get in a little red Corvette and head over to Prince's house. What's that sign on your lower right I'm seeing behind you? I can't quite read it. I wonder what it says.
It says, in honor of, I'm a Michigan native and all that, it says 117-74, New Day. That is the score of the Michigan-Ohio State game from the last 3 years, 117-74. New Day because, maybe there's an Ohio State coach whose last name is Day, and he said he was going to hang 100 on Michigan, and since he's had 100, hung on him.
Somewhere Rich Eisen is in tears, wiping away those tears of joy. I think you should probably plan on coming on the show all the time, Vincent Goodwill. Thank you so much for your time. Loved having you on.
That was great.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
You're fantastic. And how about the sneakers in the background, the kicks? That's a great looking set.
Fantastic.
Nice work. Beautifully done.
But he's got a pair of air raids back there. When was the last time you've seen those?
What size are those is the question. And would they fit me?
I'll send them to you, Suzy.
You're the greatest, Vincent. Have a great day. We hope you come back on
You
soon.
too. Thanks again.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.